I've always loved poetry since a very young age, and I studied English literature at school as well. Whether I'm setting songs or symphonic tone poems, I'm often turning to literature for inspiration. I think there are three main elements that draw me to poetry. One is the imagery, the images that the poet is evoking or the senses that it's evoking. The other is the rhythm of the words, if they have a certain flow to them or if it's quite disjointed, how you can respond to these musically. And the other is structure. Sometimes the structure by stanzas or repetition, for example, can imply certain musical elements. So I think those three elements can be great sources of inspiration for new music. In terms of imagery, some examples of where I found inspiration in poetry are a piece called This Midnight Hour, and that draws inspiration from two poems, but perhaps the most pungent of them is a very short one by the Spanish poet Juan Ramón Jiménez, and he says, "Music, a naked woman running mad through the pure night." Very short, but incredibly evocative, and you can instantly have an image with that, and I translate that into music with these cascades of sound that fan around the orchestra and the strings. Darkness, trying to evoke this midnight hour. And then in terms of rhythm, I'm working at the moment on a piece called The Gorgeous Nothings, which takes its text, fragments of poetry by Emily Dickinson, that are a collection called the Envelope Poems. So after her death, they found a treasure trove of envelopes where she would write little fragments of poetry. Something that's drawn me to Emily Dickinson's poetry for many years is that sense of rhythm and also her sense of the visuality of the poetry, of punctuation, how that changes how we recite the poetry, but also how we see it on the page, capitalization, for example. And then you have the challenge as a composer is how do you incorporate those elements that are so visual into the music? So that's a challenge too, one that I very much love. And then in terms of structure, an example is my cello concerto, which is a work in 5 movements. It's called Dance. And that's inspired by, again, a very short poem by Rumi, the Persian poet. And the poem is in 5 lines, each line corresponding to a different movement of the cello concerto. So each line begins with the word dance. Dance when you're broken open, dance when you've torn the bandage off, dance in the middle of the fighting, dance in your blood, dance when you're perfectly free. So I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to use the poetry to form the overarching structure of the music. And I think part of the reason I'm drawn to these shorter form texts is that they give more scope to really dig into them and really sort of blow them out into a more fantastical world through music. And I think this is one of the really exciting things about being a composer, is to be able to incarnate these magical worlds, which can originate from these very small kernels. So thinking, for example, in This Midnight Hour, music, a naked woman running mad through the pure night, very small, but this image can take on a musical lifetime of 12 minutes.